Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name is Rory Paquette, and I know that you know that. But, folks, I just love to remind myself about how absolutely fantastic it is to be sitting in this chair doing what I do for a living, and it's all because of you. So I want to thank you guys like I do every show. If you're not out there doing what you're doing, liking, sharing, subscribing, and sending me all of the DMs that you're sending me, oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. Folks, if you're not doing all that stuff, then I can't sit here and do what I'm doing. And I am eternally grateful to you. So, moving on, if you're a friend of the program, and I know you are, you know what time it is. We got to pay a couple bills, and let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Oh, man, fantastic stuff. It gets better every time, folks. I'm telling you right now. And you know what we're drinking? That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up and check them out. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. Folks, they brew a mean bean. It is a fantastic cup of joe, and they do all the right things for all the right reasons, including supporting veterans. If you're a veteran out there, I want to thank you and your family from the bottom of my heart for the sacrifices that you've made. Because if you didn't go out there and do what you did, then I wouldn't be able to say a word on this show. And I know because they've tried to stop me. And it's because of people like you that they can't. Folks, thank you. We're grateful and we're very, very happy that you found a home here at Power Man Podcast. We love you. So does Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Look them up and check them out and tell them the Power of Man sent you. I'm going to get one more cup of this, not cup, one more sip. Not a whole cup. I'm not slamming this. It's way too hot. All right, before I start dealing with this young buck on the other side of the table from me, this guy's got an amazing story. I know he wants to share it with all of you. This gentleman is the host of the Eagle Freedom Presents podcast. He's also an international best-selling author and the author of Miracles Are Normal, 69 Stories of Divine Intervention and Magical Manifestations. We're going to hear all about this stuff today, and we're going to hear his story as well. Please welcome to the show, Deston Rogers. Deston, how you doing, brother?
Oh, good, Rory. Thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation, and I like how you start with your morning cup of coffee. So I got mine right here. So
That's right. One of the first things, folks, one of the first things this guy said to me was, I've heard your show and I have my coffee. So you know what?
that's right.
What we were driving. We were like on the same page from moment one. Destin, you have an incredible story. You've got a lot of stuff you're doing. Why don't you just start by introducing yourself to everybody? Tell everybody a little bit about who is Destin and what kind of brings you to where you are today.
Yeah. So yeah, quite the story and quite the journey, Rory. I am one of four children. My parents were hardworking individuals. They were entrepreneurs early in life, but they didn't even, I don't think that word even existed back then. But, they did a good job of raising me and my brothers, teaching us a lot of respect and hard work and watching out for other people and taking care of other people. My journey has taken me, a bunch of travels as families always do. We travel from place to place. And, eventually we settled home. Home was Bishop, California. That's where I'm originally from. And it's right there where I started my career 40 plus year career in radio broadcasting. That's where I got into radio. And, it's been a great career. It's guided me, ups and downs. I've seen a lot of changes as we do in the industry through the course of all this, however, there's the tragedy part. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that. But, I've lost two sons. I lost their mother. And, those two things right there alone in life will challenge you. They'll challenge you to the core, whether or not you can push through something like that, And so I've been married, I've been divorced twice. I'm 0 for 2 at the plate, keep swinging, So, on that. But now I have wonderful kids. I have great grandkids, but it's been a life journey. It's definitely been a life journey to get me where I'm in today. And every day is another challenge. I do believe, God wakes us up every morning and says, here you go. Here's your slate. Now make the best of it. And there'll be challenges along the way. There'll be victories along the way. But ultimately, I do know that, He controls our life and where we go in life. And it's our job to take the reins sometime. And He lets us take control and watch us screw it up.
Yeah, right, right on. You know, I,
You
I,
know,
to say that you've unpacked a lot is an understatement. So let's go back
right.
just a step or
Yes,
two. But
yes.
brother, I can't even imagine. I have to say, I'm sorry for your loss. I cannot even imagine. I have three
Thank you.
kids, and I
Thank you.
cannot imagine.
Thank you.
And to be honest, my very first question out of the gate is, um, I can't imagine what that must have been like when the first of these tragedies hit you. How was that not the end of it all? You know what I mean? How did that not just crush you?
Well, that's a good question. And sometimes I look back at that and go, how did I keep on going from that?
Yeah.
And it was, I mean, my son's name was Cody and his mom's name was Jody. And, when he was born, it was like, here's this beautiful creation that, God gave us. And, that was my life. We weren't together at the time, but, Cody, that was my life. It was like, here's this little boy, this miracle. And so, I got to spend 2 years with him before he and his mom were taken in the accident. And when the accident happened, I can tell you where I was when I got the phone call. I can tell you where I was standing. I can tell you all about that. And some of the things I couldn't remember was what I was doing prior to that, because it was just as soon as I get that information, that's where my focus went.
Yeah.
And to process the information that I just lost my son, when I'm like, I've only had 2 years with him. How could I possibly lose my son so quickly? That's not fair. And when that happens to me, when that happened to me, it was just heart-wrenching. It was like, man, what happened? Did I do something wrong? And so to be able to continue to go on from that, um, I was early on in my faith at that time, but I did know and I did have a belief, and I do today, that, when my life ends, when that time comes, that I will be reunited. But the challenges of day to day, that was tough. That was really tough, especially I think the first 24 to 48 hours for me was the toughest. To process the fact that I'm no longer going to see my son. I don't no longer see his mom, even though we weren't together. They were still a part of my life, obviously. So it was very challenging. But I did have, I was fortunate. I had family around me, had good family, had great friends around me, and those two things were what really helped me get through this tough time that I was going through. And so I would really have to say that, having family, friends, and faith are the three things that kept me going at this time.
Wow. Wow. You said you were early on in your faith. You still had, a faith and kind of sounds like maybe a grounding, basic knowledge of it type of thing. Like, yes, I believe in God, type of deal, right? You said you were early on in it. Was that something at that point that you were able to lean on, or was that just it was there and you had to get the help from other places? And the reason I ask is because I can't imagine something testing my faith more than something like this.
Well, like I said, it was early on. Growing up as a kid, my parents never forced religion on us. It was never
Okay.
a forced thing, which I'm grateful for. They never pushed it on us. My
Hmm.
dad was Catholic, even though we we really never ever really went to church. I can only remember one or two times ever going. But it was when my first wife, when we were together, that's where I really started to get into the faith part of it.
Hmm.
And I do remember when my son passed away, that a pastor did come to the house and he did pray for me at the time. But I'd always had a belief, just my own belief growing up as a kid. I knew that there was God, even though I didn't understand the religion at that time. But I did know that there was a God. That was my personal belief. And so, was it challenging? Yeah. Were there questions like, why did it happen? How could it possibly happen? How could, something so precious be so quickly taken away from me at that time? So it was, like I said, it was early in my faith, but even early in my faith, I knew that this ultimately was being controlled by something higher than me. And I had to believe that there was a reason for it. There was a reason why they were both taken at that time. Maybe I'll never have that answer, but I do know that in my mind, God needed two special angels at that time, and those were the two special angels that he called it.
Wow. Okay. And just to have that perspective tells everybody a lot. So, you went through something similar, unbelievably again, but did I read that it was like 30 years later?
Yeah. So let me kind of set the stage on how this all happened, if I can, so you get
Of
an
course,
understanding.
please. Yeah.
So, as I mentioned before, their mom and I were not together. She had Cody, and then about a year, little after a year later, she had Dakota, her other son. Again, we were not together, and we were going through two things. We were going through a custody issue with my first son, Cody, and when I was married, the second son, Dakota, was born before I actually got married. And so it was during that marriage where questions started to come up. Well, was he really mine or not? So we did a paternity test.
Okay.
So when the accident happened, keep in mind we're in a custody issue and I'm waiting on paternity test results. Those are two
Sure.
things that are important. So when the accident happens, the first thing I did is there was another child involved, Dakota, and I had to know what to do because and law enforcement needed to know what to do with this child. Who is he going to go with? So I immediately make a phone call to my attorney. I explained what happened. My attorney was just devastated. But I said, look, and keep in mind this is 1990, right? So we don't get lab results as fast back then as we do today,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I said, but I need these results. I have to have these results. And he did everything he could. And ultimately the test comes back. And he tells me, he says, well, it says he's not your son. So there's another part of how do you process this information now, right? I just lost my son, and now a child who I think is mine is a test comes back and says he's not yours. So now I'm having to deal with the loss of my son, my first son, and now not having, contact with my second son. So we'll fast forward this up to 2008. My dad passes away. I'm back home in California. We're getting ready for his services. And my children's aunt reaches out to me and she says, Dakota, who is now older teens, says he wants to know if he can come out and meet you. I had not seen Dakota since before the accident. All those years, I had not seen him.
Oh my
So this would be the
gosh.
first time that I'd seen him. And of course, my reaction is like, obviously, yeah, of course he can come out. I was excited to see him. So we come out, he comes out, we kind of reunite. I'm on my second marriage at this time. And we reunite, we talk. I have the accident report. And so I show him the accident report. I wanted him to know what exactly happened with the accident report. He had been adopted by his grandparents. So they took legal custody of him. So from that point on, we started to build a new relationship, right? We started to build a father-son relationship. One of the key things that happened during this course is the aunt, every time I'd run into her, now keep in mind this is a small community, so everybody knows everybody.
Okay.
And I would see her and she would says, I don't care what the paternity test says. She says, I'm telling you, he's your son. And I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting. So what we had happened, and again, I'd heard this more than one time. She had told me that the grandmother had known somebody in the lab when paternity test was taken and had my blood sample changed before it was sent off. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I've heard it more than once. So we build this relationship. He calls me dad, I call him son, and we discussed taking another paternity test. But we decided at that point there's no use in it. There's really it's been so far gone. It's so far in the past. He calls me dad, I call him son. We're good with that. So March of 2024, I'm at the same radio station that I was when Cody passed away. Because I was working at the radio at the time. And I was doing news and we had a scanner and I heard the scanner go off requesting an EMS or an ambulance at this job site. And I'm like, man, there's something about that job site. Sounds like that's where my son's at. And it wasn't 15, 20 minutes later, I get a phone call from his best friend. He says, I'm sorry to tell you, they found Dakota deceased at his job site. So immediately, a couple things happen. First thing that happens is I go back to 1990. My mind just goes back because I'm like, how am I going to process this again? Losing a second son. And I'll tell you, it was just, getting that a second time was, I don't, I, losing my son the first time was devastating. Losing a second son, I think it just compounded the devastation for me. It was just like, how, why, why did this happen? Not once, but twice.
Right. Wow. I mean, the why is what definitely would have hung me up.
Mhm.
And again, that's brother, what do you do? You get that news, you start to tumble. What do you do next?
Well, obviously the first thing, again, I always say when tragedy happens, there's your brain puts a timestamp on tragedy,
Hmm.
right? So like I said, I can tell you what I was doing with my first son. I can tell you what I was doing with my second son.
Yeah.
And those timestamps are recalled faster than any computer, right? I mean, because it just goes there. And so obviously, I was at work and, one of my coworkers came up and I just got the phone. I said, hey, I said, my son just died. And, the whole thing. So I immediately had to make plans because I was doing news at the time, had to make plans to get away from the station for a little while. But for him, what made it even a little bit more difficult, or he was a volunteer firefighter for his community. He was also an EMT, and he was well known in the community. So again, it comes back to what got me through it again is the family, friends, and faith. And by that time, my faith had even grown stronger. I still didn't understand why. I still didn't know why it had to happen. So I had to start reasoning for myself why this was happening, and at least for him. And when I sit down and finally took time to, okay, why would this happen to him? And I had to think back, he had suffered mentally for years. He didn't get to know his mom. He never got to know his brother. They were both taken from him. He was living with his grandparents, living in a small community. The small community knows who his mom was, the whole family. And I think he just struggled for so long with depression. I want to say it was a lifelong depression. And ultimately, the ultimate cause was alcohol poisoning. That's what took his life.
Oh man.
And he had tried several times to quit, but I just think the pressure was just too much. And I don't think he did it obviously intentionally. It's just, I think God just said, you've suffered enough. It's time for you to come home. And what was reassuring for me was the fact that they finally got to be reunited. He finally got to be with his mom. He finally got to be with his brother.
My goodness. You mentioned that when you lost your baby son and your wife, that God needed two angels. And that's something that I heard you say here. And then even this time, God decided um, you've had enough. It's time for you to come home. So now, were you able to put this in that faith-based perspective at the time? Is this something that has happened over time that you've been able to maybe rationalize a little bit, sort of find some peace in the reasoning? How has your current perspective developed over time? When did it start?
Well, when I got the news that when Dakota passed away, it wasn't immediate faith. It was immediately back to the questions.
Right.
It took a while. As I mentioned, the first time is one thing. Second time is like, okay, God, why you want to do this? And um, it took a while to build into the faith that, okay, this is the second time that I have to go through this. And then it goes back, okay, okay, God, what is it that you're doing here? Why am I being challenged to go through this again? Not that I would want anybody else to go through, because I wouldn't want anybody to experience what it's like, right? So why do I have to go through it a second time? And somebody who was well respected in the community, and it comes down to the questions too. It's like, why do the good ones have to go, right? Why do the good ones
Right.
go and all these other people not?
Yeah.
But it's not, I guess it's not our place to decide that. God ultimately makes those decisions. And so it took me a while to really get leaning more into faith after my second son passed away. That's where I really started to dive into faith more. I got into church more and understanding, and ever since then, I've made it a point to, no matter where I was going, um, wherever I was traveling, if I was visiting somewhere, if I was visiting family somewhere, one of my first questions to myself is there a church nearby?
Hmm.
Right? Because to me, I needed that. I needed that to keep me going. That's my reset in life is, whether it's on a Sunday or it's a small group, whatever it is, those are my resets. Those are the things that help me to continue to go on. And through all of that, which is interesting, is you start to meet other people who have similar experiences. Because when you talk to somebody who hasn't lost a child, and obviously they're, wow, I couldn't go through that. But the second you connect with somebody who has lost a child, there's a unique connection, an immediate unique bond with that person that goes, because you can go, I know what that's like. I know what it's like to go through that. I had those same questions. I still have those questions. And you'll get those conversations like all of a sudden, well, out of the blue, something happens and your mind goes right back. Your mind just, whether it's a sound, a sight, a smell, whatever it is, those things immediately come back. And for me, those things are like obviously birthdays, right? Birthdays coming up, those will get you. Anniversaries of their death, those dates get you and stuff like that. So, but I think the reason why I've made it through is because God has said, I'm putting you through these challenges. And I don't know ultimately what the answer is and why, but I'm putting you through these challenges for a reason. And I think I'm still on the journey to find what that real reason is. And somewhere along the way it'll come, but he's got a reason for that.
I see. The question ringing in my head for the last few minutes has been, um, it's an unbelievable story. I'm sure someone's going to get something from it, but what makes you want to feel like it's a purpose to go out and share this story? What are you hoping to accomplish with that?
I think it's to let people know that even though you go through tragedy like I've gone through, and there's no comparison. Everybody's tragedy is different, whatever that
Yeah.
is in their life. But to hopefully inspire in them that, wow, if he's gone through the loss of two children and the loss of their mom and, other stuff in between that I've had to go through, but yet he's still standing. He's still here. Then there's got to be hope for me too. There's got to be a reason for me too to continue on through this. And if they get, like you said, if one person out there hears this and goes, wow, that's amazing, or that something he said resonates so much with me that is going to help me go through my adversity, then it's all worthwhile.
Wonderful. I mean, I appreciate that answer. I know a lot of other people do too. And so that kind of leads me to how does somebody who's been through everything you've been through, and more, it sounds like on top of that, write a book called Miracles Are Normal.
Yeah, so about the book. So just for clarification, I'm a contributing author to the book, and
Okay.
I had no intentions of writing, that was not even in the plans. I looked at my plan, my notes in the book, nope, not in the plans, but
Right.
it's through, I believe it happened through the power of connection. It
Okay.
was one connection that led to the interview, to the book. And I was one of the person who's behind it, the sole purpose publishing, uh, Dina Murray is her name, and she was actually a guest on my podcast. And I had not known that she was, I didn't know about this book or anything like that. And after we got done with the interview, she says, "Hey," she reaches back out. She says, "I'm working this book. Would you consider being a contributing author to the book?" And I was like, well, I don't know. I've never done that before. Give me radio. I can do radio, but you want me to sit down and write something in a book? But interestingly enough, I have an aunt who's a dear aunt, and she had always told me, she says, at some point, you need to write your book. You need to write your story. And months before this book came along, I had actually sat down and started writing out my story. Just nothing, just started typing away my story. So I had a foundation already, right? I had a foundation for this book. And so when I was asked to do it, I was like, well, what am I going to write? And it dawned on me, well, I already started this months ago. For some reason, again, God controls everything.
Right.
God had me sit down and start planning, not knowing that this was going to happen, but had me start on this project. And so to be asked to be a part of something like this, where miracles are normal, is just for me. It was another way that I could share a gift with other people. That maybe they don't listen to podcasts, maybe they just like to read books, and that's the way they get their information. So that's really how that came about. It's through the power of one connection that led to another connection that led to another connection that led to the book. And as part of this book, actually, we're working on a journal part of it, which will be out in a few months. And so there's going to be an accompaniment to that book as well as
Wow.
a journal. So that'll be a part of it. But it's been a great, the whole journey's been great. It's been challenging, and the book is just another part of the journey.
Nice. The now I've had a chance to check out the podcast. For those who haven't, it's a fairly new podcast, fairly new venture for you. The podcast itself, though, where did that come from with you, and what's your purpose behind it? What are you hoping to accomplish there?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I spent 40 years in radio broadcasting, so
Right.
I already kind of,
You were
I
ready.
love talking.
You were
Right?
ready for it, that's for sure.
Another God planted the seed like 40 years ago, but
Yeah, yeah.
actually I came up with the idea about 7 or 8 years ago. I just never did anything with it.
Okay.
I think when podcasts were really kind of catching on, and I thought, well, that could be kind of a cool thing to do. But it's an idea you get, and then you put the idea up on the shelf, and
Right.
that's usually where it stops. But about a year ago, I was in a position in my life. I was in between relationships. I'm not knowing what I was going to do, what direction I was going to go, and I needed something. And the question came to me is like, well, you still have this podcast idea. You have time right now. Are you going to do it or not? If you're not going to do it, then just totally forget about it. And so I said, well, this is just myself, right? And I'm like, well, let's do it then. So I sat down. This was in June of 2025. And it took months, as these things don't happen overnight. It took
Right.
months to come up with the idea. How am I going to run it? Why am I going to do it? Then the question,
Right.
why am I going to do it? Right?
Hmm.
Why do I want to do this? And at first I thought, well, I'll just do a podcast with interview. I like doing celebrity interviews. I've interviewed celebrities and had fun with that. But I wanted to, what it ultimately came down to is I wanted to still use my voice because I believe that's what God gave me. God gave me a voice to use.
Right.
And I wanted to use my voice to serve other people. So the question was, how can I serve other people using my voice? And it came to me one day, it was like, I just want to do something where, I can inspire somebody. They can rise and they can inspire and they can overcome. And I went, well, there it is, rise, inspire, and overcome. And so the purpose behind it now is I just want to provide the vehicle. I am just simply the vehicle that allows other people to come onto the show to share their stories that they've had to struggle with. And I've had different types of stories. No story is the same. There may be a little bit of similarities in their stories, but every story is different. Everybody's got a story. And so my goal with it is to obviously make it a global brand, but beyond that, the ultimate goal is to have listeners be able to listen to a guest who is going through struggles in their life and take those stories and apply them to their life and the way they've had to overcome them, the things they've done to overcome their obstacles in their life. Again, whether that's, the death of a loved one, whether that's finances, whether that's growing up in a home where there's alcohol or physical abuse, whether that's all of that, because people are suffering from these every day.
Right.
There's somebody who's suffering from that. Everything we just talked about, somebody's suffering from it right now. They're going through it right now.
Yeah.
So if they can hear something from a guest that can help them navigate through their own life circumstances right now, that's the ultimate idea with the podcast.
Nice. Nice. What's the criteria for the people you're trying to bring on there in case anybody who's listening, might be interested and wants to be a guest on your show? What are you looking for?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things I don't get into, and one of the things I'd never touch on is politics. There's enough of that out there in the world. We don't need any of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
So really, it's stories of people who've had unsurmountable odds, odds that were just like, how in the heck did I overcome that? And there's people, like I said, there's people out there who go, man, I've run into people who goes, I've got a story. Not everybody wants to tell their story, and not every story is the type of story that will come on. But it
Yeah.
is a story that says, look, when I was growing up as a kid, I had to be the man of the house, or I had to be the woman of the house. I had to take care of the other kids. Um, my mom suffered from abuse. My dad maybe was an alcoholic. And so anybody who's gone through those experiences and overcome them, went through the valleys, went through the trials, went through the tribulations, but came out the other side and said, and you're looking back on your life right now and going, I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I'm here today, you know, for the guest. So if you're like that, if you're one of these people who've gone through these, definitely reach out, you know, because I've got a place for you. I've got a place for you to tell your story. And again, every story is different. And I'll tell you, you know, the show itself is not, it's not really technically all about faith or religion,
Yeah.
but I would say 90 to 95% of the stories that come in have faith or religion somehow embedded in their stories.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not aiming that direction, just kind of how that ends up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, again, it goes back to, you know, my belief that, you know, God controls who comes in and who comes out, right?
Right.
Sometimes you'll get a guess and it doesn't work out. And in my mind, it's like, well, for some reason, God didn't think that was the fit. And
Right.
so he controls, I think he controls who comes on in the show. Yeah.
Oh, I'm certain of
Yeah, right.
that. After all the stuff I've done, 1,500 episodes
Right.
under my belt, brother, and believe me, I agree with you completely. Yeah,
Right.
100%.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I love that. I wanted to ask you too. It's a little surface level, but when I first saw the podcast title, I mean, Eagle Freedom. I was like, man, talk about a puff out your chest kind of title, right? Eagle
Right.
Freedom, presents. Where's the title from? What's that based on? What's the significance behind all that for you?
So being, you know, my background on my dad's side is Native American, a Native American background. And we always respect the eagle. And always believed the eagle to be the ultimate in birds, in ultimate in life, because the eagle represents strength. It I always say it this way, you know, the eagle's greatest enemy is a crow, but he doesn't fight the crow. What does he do? He grows to a higher elevation, to the point where the crow can no longer attack and the crow just eventually drops down. So he doesn't succumb to what the crow's doing. He rises above what the rises. He rises above to where his strength is, right? So that's where the eagle part of it comes into. And the freedom part of it to me is everybody. It doesn't matter if you're in the United States, if wherever you are in the world, everybody wants to experience some sort of freedom on some level, right? We're fortunate here in the States, we have a lot of freedom, but there's a lot of countries, as we all know, that don't have the freedoms we have.
Sure.
But the people in those communities, they want some freedom. They want to be able to go do the things that they want to do. They don't want to be controlled. So they want to experience some type of freedom. And maybe just hearing the stories on Eagle Freedom Presents, maybe that's all they need. Maybe that's all the inspiration they need to say there is freedom out there for me.
Wow. Love that. Absolutely love it. And I agree with you. The eagle is such a symbol of I mean, my goodness, like everything, strength, honor, justice, all these words kind of come to mind when you see it because that's what we've learned, was kind of behind it. So it's
Right.
powerful.
Yeah, and you think about it, you know, when we're out, if when we see an eagle, right? When we see an eagle, we're out, whatever, and all of a sudden you see an eagle, we don't just go, oh, it's just an eagle. We stop.
Right.
We go, wow, there's an eagle right there. Because it's not just a bird, it's the magnificence of it. It's like, wow, it's flying right up above me. You're
Yeah.
right. See, that's all you got to do is when people see it, they stop.
There you go. You're setting the bar high for your podcast. I love that.
Well, you know, yeah, I try.
That's right. I mean, if you got to aim for the mountaintops, man. I love
Right,
that. So,
exactly, exactly.
as you are putting this together, it feels like, and maybe it's just me. I've been doing this for a while, and yeah, sometimes, like recognizes like here a little bit. And you've got the book that you're a part of. You've got, I'm guessing, another book coming at some point. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Right.
You've got the podcast you're building, and this feels like a movement that you're putting together. Is
Yeah.
that where you're heading with this? And if you don't mind sharing a little bit of, the crystal ball, what is Destin looking to do with all these pieces?
Yeah, so I like how you brought that up because part of it is what I call the Rio movement. It's the rise, inspire, and overcome movement. And
Nice.
that is to bring rise, inspire, and overcome on a global basis to people around the world. It is a movement. It's a movement because there's so much. hate and discontent out there, it's bringing hope and inspiration, but it takes a movement. It takes more than one person to do it. It takes multiple people to create the movement. And by bringing other people on, by bringing the guests on, by your audience, my audience, listening to these stories, it's all part of the real movement. It's all creating that movement that we can inspire other people, that we don't have to live in the world of negativity that is so prevalent out there right now. That positivity is something that we need in this world. And the Rio movement does that. It brings that positivity, even though there's the adversities that we go through. The end result is the positivity of the story, right? It's just like your podcast. You're talking about men and the struggles they go through and all that. That's a positive thing,
Right.
right? So for guys, I know we haven't really touched on about, when you think about everybody processes grief, loss, tragedy differently. And I think men we process things a lot differently, right? So if I can go back real quick.
Of course.
So like when my kids passed away, I was like, okay, Cody passed away. I went back to work a week later. Dakota passed away. I think it was maybe a week and a half later. And it was like, well, I got to get back to work. I got to get busy.
Yeah.
I've got myself to take care of. I've got loved ones I got to take care of. And so this whole thing about men always having to be strong, always having to be the tough one. We can't show weakness. And I think what you do with your podcast is you're letting men come in and say, look, we break down. We break down differently. I can't tell you how many times internally I think there's a lot of times inside that I was breaking down. When I say breaking down, like inside you're crying, right? You're
Yeah.
like, I can't show it outside. That inside I'm breaking down. And there are those times for the men and women out there. There are those times where we do find ourselves alone, and all of a sudden, here come the tears because there's so much weight, I think, on our shoulders. And we just want a place to take that weight and go, I need to get that off of me for a while. And to know that, like I said, for your podcast, you're allowing the men to say, look, I have struggled. I am struggling. And allow them to come on your show and say, it's okay. It's okay for men to struggle. And it's okay, if the ladies to walk, if you're in a married, if you're in a relationship, whatever, it's okay to walk up to your significant other and say, are you okay? Right. And I say that in not just, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? I mean, are you really okay? Because how many times as going through life's tragedies do we wish somebody would just come up to us and go, hey, how are you really doing with this? You know.
Right. Yeah, and
So I
that's
hope that
important.
answers your question.
It does. I'm looking forward to seeing where you take the movement. So, the movement that you're putting together, is it primarily men that you're trying to reach through your work?
No, no, it's not just primarily men.
Okay.
It's men, it's women, but I do come across the stories, with the guys that I do interview. It's that whole, we have to be strong thing, and
Right.
there's it doesn't seem to who I talk to, right? If it's a guy, you know. But I've also interviewed, women who've also experienced who've been in relationships and see that their significant other is struggling too. So
Yeah,
it's not just that it's geared to it, but that's sometimes where the conversation just goes.
for sure. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify what you were building.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah,
So,
no, no, I
um,
get that. Yeah.
so when are we going to get the Deston Rogers, book? Like your book just from you, nobody else type of book.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I keep toying with that. A matter of fact, just before today's podcast, I was sitting down going, I'm going to start writing some more information, getting some more details out there. Because it takes a while to do that. But I have been asked about it, and I think about, oh, what am I going to call it? What am I going to title it? But I think at some point it will happen, because I do have a lot of stuff that we haven't been able to talk about. We hadn't talked about, and just real briefly, me and my brothers watched our mom take her last breath.
Oh,
She passed away from cancer, but that was her
ouch.
dying wish. Her dying wish was that her boys were there, and so that happened.
Yeah.
My father was found deceased. He built a trailer park for us in California, and he was found deceased in his trailer park, out in the lawn. That happened, and then my mom's second husband, I had to make a decision on whether or not he survived because he had an illness, and I had to make the
Oh,
decision even though I was not his child. So these are all just other things that happened along the way, and so all of these, I think, will be part of the story. You know, I've seen I've seen what alcohol does to a family. I've seen alcohol tear a family apart. I've seen physical abuse. I've witnessed all of this. So it's all part of the journey. And I think that'll all come out, in the book as well.
Yeah, you definitely have a book in you. I mean, I can hear it from here. So
Thank
yeah,
you. Thank you. Thank you.
100%. I appreciate you giving us that synopsis. I mean, there's never enough time in a podcast to cover everything.
No, right?
But no, it's you've been through a lot. You've learned how to cope with a lot of it. It sounds like you've learned a lot of this on your own.
Well, yeah, it has been on my own. Like I said, I still had family, faith, and friends, but the personal journey, the things that I've had to learn along the way, learn to be accountable to myself, um, learn about the mistakes I've made, try not to repeat these mistakes, um, and just continuing to move on to the next day. Sometimes we talked about this. Continuing on to the next day is sometimes the hardest thing. It's just, okay, God woke me up this morning and he said, here's your clean slate. Now do what you want with it. And yeah, so like I said, there's a lot that hasn't been told, um, but it'll all be part of it.
Wow. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it, and you're
Yeah, thank
doing a great job of leading by example, brother. In terms of how
you.
you've
Thank you.
handled all this stuff, sharing your story and whatnot, and that's really important for I think men follow the example a lot more than they are ever going to follow words.
Yeah, and it's also about leaving a legacy behind. Because I
Yeah.
still have kids. I have kids now. I have other grandkids, and it's leaving a legacy, I think, of not quitting.
Mm.
Because it would be so easy to quit. It would be so easy to just say, I'm done. I'm tired of it. I just can't do it anymore. And those questions pop up. Those are legitimate questions that pop up in the mind. I can't do this anymore. But to know that I've managed to go through all this and I didn't quit, because I look back and I say, I want my grandkids and my kids to go, even though he went through all this stuff, he didn't stop.
Yeah.
Even at the very end, if I didn't accomplish everything I want to accomplish, right? At least I can go back and say, I tried it. I didn't say, I wish I would have. I did it.
Nice, nice. Well, I love what you're building. I do have one more question for you before I get to that. I want to make sure we get your contact info out there. So tell
Sure.
everybody how they can reach you. How can they reach Destin? Are you on what platforms are you on? Give it to them.
Yeah, so everything is under Eagle Freedom Presents, whether that's Facebook, all the social media, YouTube, all the podcast stuff. EagleFreedomPresents.com. You can go to my website. It's got all my contact information in there. It's the link to the book. You can get that as well. And so that's going to be the easiest. Go to EagleFreedomPresents.com. If you want to email me directly, just email EagleFreedomPresents@gmail.com. I just keep it really simple.
That's perfect. I appreciate you putting that out there, and we'll make sure that gets into our show notes, and things like that too. So, as we kind of bring this to a close, for the sake of time, I want to make sure that there isn't anything that I've missed. So, is there anything that I didn't ask you? Is there anything that we talked about you want to double down on? Maybe drive home, or is there maybe just a nugget, a leave behind piece of advice, something like that you want to leave for our 90%, men listeners that we have in this program? I'm going to let you go ahead and kind of wrap for the last, minute or two. Go for it, brother.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. And first of all, just thank you again for allowing me to be on the show. You do a great job as a host. I want to thank you for that. Um, you know, Life has given me a lot of obstacles, and God has given me a lot of obstacles. And I sometimes say this is that the minute we're conceived, the minute we're given our first breath of life, God has planned everything out for us. He already knows every trial we're going to face, the happy times, the sad times. He already knows everything that's going to happen in our lives. I think for me, in my journey, he's been testing me along the way. He wants to know, how's my strength? He wants to know if I will he wants to challenge me, and I've taken those challenges not because I wanted to, but because I didn't have a choice. And so for the guys out there that are listening to this, simple things. One, know it's okay to struggle. Know it's okay to ask for help. Very important. I have a counselor I use. I talk once or twice a month. I have to. I mean, I need that. It is okay to ask for help. If you have a friend a family member, whatever. If you've got that one person that you know that you can talk to, reach out to them and say, you know what, I'm having a bad day. You know what, can we grab some coffee? I just need to talk. I just need to vent. Sometimes that's all we need. So just know that that is okay. And I think the final thing I think I would like to leave, I've got this verse, it's 2 Timothy 4:7. And I've really leaned into this. This is when I get to the end of my life, this is how I want it to be. And it's I've fought the good fight, I've finished the race, I have kept the faith. That's how I think, when my time is called, that I just want people to know I kept the faith. I kept going. I didn't give up. And, I'm looking forward, it's kind of hard to say, but I'm looking forward to the day when I can be reunited with my boys and their mom in heaven.
Great wrap up. I knew you would. I knew you'd be able to handle that. Way to go. I appreciate that mic drop moment there. All right. Well, international best-selling author of Miracles Are Normal, 69 Stories of Divine Interventions and Magical Manifestations, and the host of the hit podcast Eagle Freedom Presents podcast. Um, uh, Deston Rogers. Deston, brother, thank you for being here, for sharing all of this with everybody. I know there's men out there who are dealing with these things who are going to benefit from hearing how you handled it. And if they start reaching out to you after this, it's not going to surprise me at all. So I'm glad that you're there. We need more men like you. Thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you, Roy. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it. Folks, it's been another incredible episode of the Power Man podcast. And the reason we bring these powerful men on here with these powerful messages is because we are united in hoping that you can find your power so that you can become a better provider, a better protector, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, so that you can be a better husband, a better father, a better man tomorrow than you are today. And the reason that we want that for you is because you matter. It's because you have value. And it's because you are worth it. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.